Every single month, somewhere on this planet, a small farmer sells his animals. Not because he wants to, not because the market is bad, but because he simply cannot afford to feed them anymore. Feed costs have doubled in many parts of the world over the last 4 years. In some regions, they have tripled. And the farmers who built their lives around keeping animals who raise chickens, pigs, goats, cows are being forced to make impossible choices.
The economics are turning against us.
Sell the herd, or go into debt just to keep them alive through winter. This is not a small problem. This is a silent crisis happening on homesteads and small farms around the world right now, today. And most people outside of farming never hear about it. But you are here, which means you already sense it. You already understand that something is shifting. That the old way of depending entirely on commercial feed bags from the store, that system is becoming
Stop
fragile,
throwing away feed.
expensive, unreliable. And here is what I want to tell you today. There is another way. A method that experienced homesteaders and traditional farmers have used for generations, long before feed stores existed, long before pelleted grain mixes came in 50-pound bags. A method built around 4 interlocking systems that work together to produce free, abundant, nutritious livestock feed throughout the entire year. Not in theory, not as an experiment, but as a real, proven, practical approach that can dramatically reduce, or in some cases, entirely eliminate your dependence on purchased feed. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, if you are someone who is serious about building real independence on your land, then take a moment right now and subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it tells me that this kind of content is worth creating more of. And please, stay until the very end of this video. Because the 4 systems I am going to walk you through today each build on the one before it. If you leave early, you will be missing the piece that holds it all together. Now, let us talk about where we are. For most of modern agricultural history, roughly the last 70 years, the model for feeding livestock has been remarkably simple. You go to the feed store, you buy a bag, you pour it in the trough. Done. This model worked well when fuel was cheap, when grain was abundant, when supply chains moved without interruption, and when the relationship between a farmer's income and his input costs made sense. That era is ending. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, undeniably, the economics of farm feed are turning against the small farmer. Think about it this way. Imagine you are running a small business. Your core operating cost,
your garden
the one
grows
thing you
to
cannot avoid,
harvest,
keeps rising
one
every
for
year.
your table,
But your income
one
stays
for
roughly
your
the same.
animals.
Or your income drops. What happens to that business over time is less than #0. 5# is greater than. It becomes unsustainable. It collapses. That is exactly what is happening to thousands of small-scale livestock keepers right now. The cost of feed is the business. When the cost of feed becomes unmanageable, the animals go. And when the animals go, a piece of that family's food security goes with them. This is why I believe the 4-system method is not just useful, it is necessary. It is one of the most important skills a homestead farmer can develop in this current era. And what makes it powerful is not any single one of the 4 systems on its own. What makes it powerful is how they integrate, how they feed into each other, how they create a year-round cycle that produces food for your animals from your own land, your own labor, and your own ingenuity, without a receipt, without a delivery truck, and without a bill at the end of the month. So let us begin. The first system
A bucket
is what
of
I call
water,
the living larder.
some grain,
And I want you to picture something
3
for a moment.
days. That is all
Picture a
fermented
forest
feed
edge.
requires.
Not a dense, dark,
Pasture, the
impenetrable
ancient
forest,
integration
but a
of
forest
trees and
edge,
animals.
where the trees thin
Shade,
out, where
mast,
sunlight
browse,
still
and
reaches the
pasture
ground,
in one
where the
managed
undergrowth is
system.
rich and green and alive. Now picture an animal, a pig, a chicken, a goat, moving through that edge freely. What is it doing? It is eating. Every single step it takes, it finds something. A root, a grub, a fallen berry, a patch of grass, a beetle under the bark of a rotting log. That forest edge is a living larder. It is a pantry that restocks itself, and it has been feeding animals for millions of years. The living larder system is the practice of deliberately designing and managing your land so that it functions like that forest edge permanently and productively for your specific livestock. This is not simply letting animals roam wherever they want. That approach leads to overgrazing, soil compaction, and degraded land within a few seasons. What I am describing is something more intentional. It is the planting, establishment, and rotation of forage species, trees, shrubs, perennial plants, and ground covers that produce high-value feed continuously across the seasons. Most people think of livestock feed as something that comes in dry, stored form. Pellets, grain, hay. But the most nutritionally dense, the most naturally suited, and often the most abundant feed available to your animals is living. It is
What's
growing right
inside
now,
your compost
somewhere
heap?
on your land, or it
The
could
answer might
if
be
you
worth
plant it
harvesting
intentionally.
before it disappears.
Here is where this gets fascinating. When researchers and traditional farmers have looked closely at what animals choose to eat when given access to a diverse, well-managed pasture or semi-pasture system, they consistently find something remarkable. Animals self-select for nutritional balance. A chicken on diverse pasture will eat grass, then scratch for insects, then peck at certain broadleaf plants, then find seeds, and that sequence, across a single morning, often provides a more complete nutritional profile than anything you can buy in a bag. The bag is a convenience. The living larder is a solution. Now, the specific plants you establish will depend entirely on your climate, your soil, and the species of animals you keep. But let me give you the framework that applies universally. You are designing for 3 layers. The high canopy layer, which provides shade, mast crops like acorns and chestnuts for pigs and poultry, and structural habitat. The mid layer, which includes shrubs and small trees like mulberry, elderberry, hazel, and willow, all of which are extraordinarily productive, all of which are deeply nutritious for various livestock, and most of which regrow aggressively after being cut back. And the ground layer, the grasses, legumes, brassicas, chicory, plantain, and other broadleaf species that form the daily grazing base. When all 3 layers are present and managed in rotation, your land becomes a machine. A quiet, patient, beautiful machine that produces feed every single day of the year, even in winter, when the dormant roots of deep-rooted perennials are still accessible to pigs, when the dried berries still cling to elder branches, when the kale and turnips are frost-sweetened and waiting in the ground. This is crucial. The living larder does not replace all other feed, not at first, and perhaps not entirely, depending on your stocking density. But it is the foundation. It is the base upon which everything else in the 4-system method rests. Without it, you are always buying feed to supplement. With it, you are only occasionally supplementing what your land already provides. The second system is one that I find most people dramatically underestimate. And it may be the single most powerful free feed source available to any homestead in any climate on any size of land. I am talking about waste cycling, transformation of what you already have and what is already happening on your farm into high-protein, high-energy feed. Let me explain what I mean, because this goes far beyond composting. Picture a river. Now picture a dam across that river. On one side of the dam, the water backs up, accumulates, deepens. On the other side, downstream, the riverbed dries out. What most farms do with their organic waste, their kitchen scraps, their garden residues, their spoiled produce, their crop leftovers, is let it flow past the dam. It goes into a pile somewhere. It rots slowly. Maybe eventually it goes back into the soil. But that slow rot, unmanaged, unconverted, is a missed opportunity of enormous proportions. The waste cycling system is the dam. It captures that flow of organic material and passes it through a conversion process before it reaches the soil. That conversion process is livestock. Specifically, it is the strategic use of certain animals to process organic waste into protein, calories, and fertility. Here is the most important example of this. Chickens is less than hash 0. 5 hash is greater than. A small flock of well-managed chickens, given access to your household food scraps, your garden waste, and a properly managed compost system, will convert material that was going to rot into eggs and meat every day, without a feed bill, or with a dramatically reduced one. Traditional farm families around the world, in Asia, in Eastern Europe, in Latin America, kept chickens almost entirely on kitchen scraps and foraging for centuries. The idea that chickens need a commercially formulated diet to survive and produce is a relatively recent invention, tied directly to the industrialization of agriculture. It is not a biological truth. But the waste cycling system goes deeper than kitchen scraps. Stay with me, because this part is important. One of the most underutilized waste streams on any farm is garden and crop residue. The outer leaves of cabbages that you peel away, the brassica stalks after harvest, the pea and bean vines, the squash leaves, the tomato plants at end of season. Most of this material, if it is not diseased, is directly edible by goats, rabbits, pigs, and poultry. Some of it is extraordinarily nutritious. The leaves of pea and bean plants, for example, are rich in protein. The outer leaves of cabbages and kale are high in vitamins and minerals. What your garden produces is not just food for you. It is a dual output system, food for you and feed for your animals, if you design it that way. And then there is the deeper layer of waste cycling, which most homesteaders have heard about, but few have implemented at scale.
This is
Insect
what free
cultivation,
feed looks like from the ground up.
specifically black soldier fly larvae. If you have never heard of this, please pay close attention, because this single practice could cut your poultry and pig feed costs in half. Black soldier fly larvae are extraordinary organisms. They consume organic waste food scraps, manure, garden residues, and convert it into one of the highest protein feed ingredients available. Their larvae, at the right stage, are approximately 40% protein and 30% fat. That is roughly comparable to premium fish meal, one of the most expensive feed ingredients in commercial poultry production. And you can produce it at home from material you were already throwing away. The setup is simple. A contained bin or system that allows adult flies to lay eggs, provides appropriate warmth and moisture for larva development, and has a self-harvesting ramp or collection point where the mature larvae crawl out and fall into a collection bucket for your chickens. A well-managed black soldier fly colony can process significant volumes of organic waste every week and produce kilograms of larvae, essentially protein pellets that your chickens and pigs will fight each other to eat. This is not a fringe idea. It is practiced by serious homesteaders on every continent and is increasingly being studied by agricultural researchers as one of the most efficient feed conversion systems known. Waste cycling, at its core, is a shift in perspective. It asks you to look at your farm not as a place where resources flow in and waste flows out, but as a closed loop. Every time you throw something away, you are throwing away potential feed. Every time you send organic material to a pile without passing it through an animal first, you are leaving calories and protein on the table. The four-system method asks you to close that loop. The living larder and the waste cycling system together already represent a radical reduction in purchased feed costs. But we are only halfway through. The third system is about time, about the future, about the harvest that comes not next week, but next season and the season after that. I call it the abundance reserve. And it is the practice of producing and storing feed surpluses during periods of natural abundance to cover periods of scarcity. This is, at its simplest, the oldest agricultural practice in human history. It is how every civilization before ours survived winter. It is how nomadic herders on the ancient steppe kept their animals alive when the frozen ground offered nothing. It is how subsistence farmers in every cold climate culture made it from the last harvest to the first thaw. Most people never realize this, but the biggest cost pressure in feeding livestock through winter is not actually the cost of the feed itself. It is the timing mismatch. In late summer and early autumn, most farms have an abundance of organic material surplus garden crops, overgrown pasture, fallen fruit, crop residues. But this material is almost never systematically harvested and stored for winter use. It rots in the field. It composts in a pile. And then in January and February, when the land is bare and the animals are hungry, the farmer drives to the feed store. The abundance reserve system exists to prevent exactly this.
Independence feed, grown on your own land, no delivery required, available year-round, free with proper management.
The majority of small homesteaders with grazing animals are buying hay rather than making it. Even 1 or 2 acres of managed pasture, cut at the right time and properly dried, can produce a significant quantity of hay for a small herd through winter. But beyond conventional hay, there is a world of fodder crops that are dramatically higher in nutrition and far easier to grow in a garden-scale setting. Sunflowers grown for seed for the entire head, including seeds and petals, and dried whole for winter poultry feed. Corn, not sweet corn, but field corn, grown for the entire ear and dried on the stalk. Sorghum, amaranth, one of the most extraordinary homestead feed crops that almost no one grows, producing massive seed heads of high-protein grain and enormous leafy biomass that can be dried and stored. Kale and other brassicas, which can be cut and dried or left standing in the garden to be harvested by your animals through frosts and light snows. The second component of the abundance reserve is root vegetable storage. This is one of the most powerful, most underused tools in the homestead feed system. Turnips. Mangels, the large fodder beet that was grown by European farmers for centuries, specifically to feed livestock through winter. Parsnips. Carrots. Jerusalem artichokes. These crops are extraordinarily easy to grow, produce high yields even in poor soil, store well, and are loved by virtually every species of livestock. A bed of mangels the size of a large living room can produce hundreds of kilograms of feed that stores in a cool root cellar from October through March. When your chickens are standing in frozen mud in February, looking listless, and you carry out a bucket of chopped mangels, the transformation is immediate. You can see the energy return. You can watch them come back to life. That is not a commercial feed product doing that. That is food grown on your own land, stored in your own cellar, costing nothing except the seed and the labor. The third component is fermented and preserved feed. Fermentation is a profound technology that our ancestors understood deeply and that modern farming has almost entirely abandoned. When you ferment grain or vegetable material, when you submerge it in water with naturally occurring bacteria and allow it to acidify, you do several remarkable things simultaneously. You increase the digestibility of the material. You enhance its nutritional profile through the production of beneficial acids and enzymes. You allow the grain to expand significantly, meaning a smaller volume feeds more animals. And you extend the shelf life of material that might otherwise spoil. Fermented grain, sometimes called fermented feed or sprouted grain, has been used by poultry keepers and pig farmers across Asia and Eastern Europe for generations. It requires nothing more than a bucket of water, some grain or kitchen scraps, a few days of time, and the wild bacteria that exist on every grain surface in the world. The results, in terms of animal health, egg production, and feed efficiency,
I keep
are
chickens.
consistently impressive.
Could I take what you can't sell?
There is something I want you to sit with for a moment. The abundance reserve system asks something of you that is almost countercultural in the modern world. It asks you to think ahead, to work in summer for the benefit of winter, to do things now that will not pay off until months later. We live in a world optimized for instant results, instant delivery, instant gratification. But farming, real farming, the farming that produces genuine independence, does not work that way. It works on cycles. It works on seasons. And the farmer who prepares in abundance for the season of scarcity is the farmer who never has to make desperate trips to the feed store in January at inflated prices. Now we come to the fourth system, and this one is different in character from the first three. It is less about plants and more about relationships. Less about what you grow and more about how you see your farm as part of a larger ecosystem and how you position yourself within that ecosystem to capture resources that others are discarding. I call this system the community harvest. And once you understand it, you will start to see free feed everywhere. Here is the insight at the core of this system. Every business, every institution, every agricultural operation around you is producing organic waste. Right now, today, most of this waste is being thrown away, sent to landfill, or composted at significant cost. But to your livestock, it is not waste at all. It is feed. Think about the bakery in your nearest town. Every day at closing time, unsold bread and baked goods are thrown away. Some of it goes to charity. Much of it goes in the bin. A single small bakery can produce enough surplus bread to supplement a backyard chicken flock with carbohydrate energy indefinitely. And many bakers, when approached with a polite request and an explanation, are delighted to set this material aside for collection, because it saves them the cost of disposal. Think about the greengrocer or the supermarket produce section. The outer leaves of lettuces and cabbages that are stripped before display. The slightly overripe fruits that cannot be sold. The damaged vegetables. The wilting herbs. In many countries and many stores, this material is genuinely available to anyone who asks and commits to regular collection. It is called gleaning in some traditions, one of the oldest agricultural practices in human history. In the Book of Ruth, gleaning was a rite. It was the practice
Every
of
hedgerow
collecting
species
what the
earns
harvest
its
left
place.
behind for those
Plant
who needed it.
mixed.
The
Management
community
is
harvest
easier
system is a
and
modern
value
form of
is
planning.
greater.
Think about farms and orchards near you. The apple orchard that loses 30% of its crop to windfall apples that fall to the ground and cannot be sold. Pigs love apples. Chickens love apples. Goats will The grain farmer with sweepings from the barn floor, small volumes of mixed grain dust and seed that are unusable commercially but are perfectly acceptable as poultry feed. The brewery that produces spent grain, the wet, nutrient-rich barley left after brewing beer, which most microbreweries are actively trying to give away because disposal is expensive. Spent grain is an excellent short-term feed supplement for pigs, cattle, and poultry. One medium-sized microbrewery can produce enough spent grain weekly to significantly supplement a small homestead herd. This is crucial.
Barn
The community
sweepings,
harvest system
useless to the
requires
grain
something
farmer,
that the
valuable
other three
to you.
systems do not.
Small volumes of
requires
mixed screenings
social
are
capital.
excellent
It
supplemental poultry
requires you
feed.
to go and talk to people, to introduce yourself, to explain what you are doing and why, to build relationships with local businesses and producers. For some people, this is the easiest thing in the world. For others, it feels uncomfortable. But I want to assure you of something. In the overwhelming majority of cases, the people you approach with this kind of request are grateful because you are solving a problem for them. You are taking something off their hands that was costing them time, effort, or money to dispose of. You are a solution, not a beggar. Remember that. The community harvest system also has a broader dimension that I find deeply
Understand the
meaningful.
life cycle.
It is a
then
reconnection
manage
to
it.
the way agricultural
The
communities
pre-pupa stage is
traditionally
when you
functioned.
harvest.
Before
tell
the
you when they're
industrial
ready.
food system separated production and consumption, before packaging made food anonymous, before supermarkets became the only interface between a person and their food, there were relationships. The farmer knew the miller. The miller knew the baker. The baker knew the butcher. And the scraps and surpluses of each fed into the operations of the others. Nothing was wasted. Everything circulated. The community was the system. And when you build your own version of this, even on a small scale, even with just 2 or 3 local relationships, you are rebuilding something that our great-grandparents took for granted and that the industrial food system systematically dismantled. Now, I want to step back and look at all 4 systems together. Because this is where it becomes truly powerful, and this is why I asked you to stay until the end. The living larder is your baseline. It is the continuous, daily, year-round production of feed from your managed land. It provides the foundational caloric and nutritional base for your animals across all seasons. It is built slowly, over 1 to 3 years, as your perennial species establish and your rotational system matures. But once it is established, it runs largely on its own, requiring only management and observation. Waste cycling is your efficiency multiplier. It takes the organic material that would otherwise leave your farm as waste, and before it can escape, it passes through an animal. The animal converts it into protein and calories and the manure goes back into the land, feeding the living larder. This is a loop within a loop. Each time around the cycle, the system becomes more productive and less dependent on external inputs. The abundance reserve is your buffer. It is the gap filler. When winter arrives and the living larder goes dormant, when the waste cycling system slows because your garden is not producing, the abundance reserve steps in. The dried sunflower heads hanging in the barn. The clamped turnips in the ground. The fermented grain in the crocks. These are the stores that bridge the gap between one productive season and the next. And the community harvest is your extension. It reaches beyond your land and draws into your system resources that no amount of careful management on your own property could produce. It multiplies your effective land area without adding a single acre. It builds relationships that may prove valuable in ways you cannot yet anticipate. And it ties your homestead into a web of local productivity that is inherently more resilient than any single isolated operation. When all four systems are running simultaneously, when your silvopasture is maturing, your larvae bin is processing kitchen scraps, your root cellar is full of fodder beets, and your weekly brewery run is filling a bucket of spent grain, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel it before you can even calculate it. The trips to the feed store become fewer. The receipts become smaller. Your animals are healthier not because you are spending more, but because the variety and freshness of their diet is better than anything a commercial formula can replicate. Your land becomes more productive year after year because you are cycling nutrients rather than importing them and exporting them. Your confidence grows. Not the brittle confidence of someone who believes nothing bad will ever happen, but the deep, quiet confidence of someone who knows that if the supply chain breaks, if prices double again, if the store runs out, they will be fine. That confidence is not arrogance. It is earned. It is the product of knowledge applied to land, applied over time, with patience and intention. And it is available to anyone willing to build it. Not to the wealthy, not to the privileged, not to those with hundreds of acres and expensive equipment. It is available to the person with a quarter-acre and a flock of 6 chickens. It is available to the person with a small paddock and 2 goats. It is available to you wherever you are, whatever your starting point. I want to address something directly. Some of you watching this are thinking, this sounds wonderful, but I do not have time. I have a job. I have children. I have a life that is already full, and I understand that. I hear it. But I want to reframe the question slightly. The 4 systems I have described today are not additional tasks on top of your existing life. They are replacements for other activities. Instead of driving to the feed store, you are spending that time building a system that eliminates the need to drive to the feed store. Instead of disposing of food scraps, you are routing them through a bin of larvae that produces free protein. The initial investment of time and attention is real, but the ongoing return on that investment is also real, measured in money saved, in feed bills reduced, in resilience built, month by month, season by season. There is also a different kind of value here that is harder to quantify. When you build these systems, when you plant a mulberry tree for your chickens, when you harvest spent grain from a local brewer, when you pull a bucket of fat turnips from the ground in January and watch your animals eat, you feel something. Something old. Something satisfying in a way that a like on social media will never replicate. You feel competent. You feel connected to your land, to the cycle of seasons, to a long lineage of people who fed themselves and their animals from the world around them. You feel, perhaps for the first time in a long time, genuinely free. That freedom is not accidental. It is designed. It is built. And it starts with a decision. Not the decision to do everything at once. Do not make that mistake. Not the decision to tear up your farm and rebuild it from scratch this weekend. The decision is quieter than that. It is the decision to begin, to plant one thing, to start one waste cycling practice, to grow one bed of fodder beets, to make one phone call to one local bakery. Just one. This week. Because that one action, repeated and built upon season after season, is how every resilient homestead in history was built. Not in a day, not in a season, but through consistent, intentional action taken in the direction of independence. The world is asking hard questions of farmers right now, of small-scale producers, of the people who grow food the old way, the honest way, the way that makes sense. It is asking, can you afford to keep going? Can you survive when the inputs cost more than the outputs? Can you hold on when the economics turn against you? The four-system method is an answer to those questions. Not a perfect answer. Not an answer that solves everything overnight, but a real answer. A practical, proven, land-based answer built on the accumulated wisdom of traditional farmers, progressive homesteaders, and careful observers who understood something that the industrial food system has tried to make us forget. The land, properly managed, is generous.
Great, we
The
saved
world
them
around
for
us,
ya.
properly observed, is full
And
of
I
feed.
have the bread scraps ready
And the farmer
over
who
here.
learns to see it and to capture it will never have to choose between paying the feed bill and keeping the flock. I want to close with something I genuinely believe.
By rotating
The small
these
farmer,
four
the
crops,
homestead
we
kid,
enrich the
person
soil
who
and
grows
ensure
food
a
with their
harvest
own
for
hands
everyone
and
in
feeds their
the year
own
to
animals,
come.
that person matters. Not in a sentimental, nostalgic way. In a structural, civilizational way. Every community that has a network of resilient, food-producing households is a community that can survive disruption. Every region with thousands of small farms using closed-loop feed systems is a region that cannot be held hostage by global supply chains. What you build on your small piece of land is not just a personal achievement. It is a contribution to something much larger than yourself. And that is worth doing. That is worth the early mornings and the late harvests and the cold February mornings when you carry feed across frozen ground. That is worth the patience of planting trees whose full shade you may not sit under for a decade. That is worth every choice to do things the slow, right, deep way instead of the fast, easy, dependent way. You are here at the end of this video. And I hope genuinely, sincerely, that something I have said today has landed with you. That one system, one idea, one image has stuck. The forest edge that feeds animals every day without a receipt. The dam that captures organic waste before it can escape. The root cellar full of turnips that bridges the hungry gap. The relationship with a local brewer that brings a bucket of spent grain every week. If even one of these becomes a part of your farm this year, you will be better prepared than you were before you watched this video. And next year, you will build another. And the year after that, another still. Until one day, you will stand in your barn in winter with full feeders and a full root cellar and a living larder coming alive again in the early spring light. And you will feel something you cannot quite name, but that your great-grandparents knew intimately. You will feel that you are in the right relationship with your land, and that you are ready for whatever comes next. If this video has given you something valuable, please subscribe to this channel right now. There is more like this coming, practical, honest, experience-rooted content for people who are serious about building real food independence. Share this video with someone who keeps animals, who gardens, who is thinking about starting a homestead, or who is already on one and is feeling the pressure of rising feed costs.
Open the
This
door
kind of
you
information
built.
travels best
The
from
full
one farmer
barn
to
is
another.
the goal.
And leave
You
a
know
comment
how to
below.
build
I
it
read
now.
every one. Tell me which of the four systems resonates most with you. Tell me what you are already doing on your land. Ask me a question. Challenge something I said. The conversation in the comment section of this channel is one of the most valuable things about it, and it only exists because people like you choose to be part of it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about this. And I will see you in the next one.